Welcome back to Jay's Smokehouse, microdosing with Psilocybin. This is that discovery call with Trusted Canna Nurses that I've been telling you guys about. Now, this is purely for educational purposes and just to let you know how this process goes through my own experience. Now, go ahead and take it away, Ariane.
So let's just get started. I'm really curious as to what has brought your interest into microdosing. Why are we having this call today? Why are you here? What's got you into it? What's your interest?
So memory is my biggest issue. Like I've said on many videos in the past with you guys also, my memory is not that great. I want to get to the day-to-day tasks. That's what I'm really working on, is wanting to be able to remember what's going on just to be able to get through the day. And, there's, like I've said on so many times, there's been so many tasks that I've had written down that I've forgotten just because I forgot to look at the things that I've written down. But that's the main thing. And then also I just, like to work into a microdose, I think, into where I can work on past trauma. But I really want to build up a base, is at least what I've researched on my own. You guys tell me if I'm right or wrong, but I just thought a microdose might help with a base and doing it medicinally and not trying to just have fun with it.
No, yeah, totally. I love that's kind of like why that's brought you here, as far as surveying the landscape in a way. Or what I say is, you're starting small, you're kind of filling the waters into this and building a relationship with the mushroom before actually going into, a bigger experience. And there's a lot of value in that, because especially if you don't have a previous experience with these things, you want to feel safe when you're going into it. So if you at least know what it kind of feels like in your body and you're able to kind of play with the doses in a lower dose range, then when you go into the bigger doses, you're going to feel safer, and you're only going to allow yourself to go as deep as you feel safe. So there's value in that.
Good.
Very cool. Very cool. So one of my questions that I have for just out of curiosity is if you have any mental health diagnosis or anything like that, anything that you would like to share that would be relevant as well.
Definitely. I've been diagnosed with PTSD, TBI, and hyperanxiety. Those are the three main things I'd like to really work on. And those are mainly from my combat, from being in the military service.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for sharing that. Are you currently using any medications or anything like that?
The only medication that I use right now is cannabis. So that's, as much as it can be used as medication is what I use. Nothing else touches my body. Not anymore, at least.
Okay. Have you ever used anything in the past, any medications for depression or anxiety? Have you explored anything?
I have. So I've tried LSD before when I was much younger. I didn't really, I gotta be honest, I did not do it medicinally. I was just having fun with friends. So I thought I really wanted to experience this before I typically in the past, I thought if I touched even cannabis that I would have been a heroin addict by the day's end. So I didn't do a lot of stuff. So once I got okay with cannabis, I wanted to experience things rather than not experience it, and then try to talk to people about, using a substance when I've never ever tried it. So I tried LSD. I really, really enjoyed it. I have a very high tolerance to it. Apparently, I did about 10 times more than everyone else around me, and it still did not affect me as much as the others. So I learned that, but I also know that I've been addicted to substances in the past, but I know that they were actually addictive substances. But I try to stay away from doing things over and over and over, because I know that I can develop that. So I've only done LSD about 1 to 2 times. I think it was 2 times. Then I have done a couple of shrooms doses, but I don't think that they were very large, as I just saw minor. I've never seen it, but the way I've been told is that on shrooms, you can sometimes see like a light side and a dark side, and people typically try to have fun with the light side, but I've never experienced that myself.
Yeah. So a couple of things that I just want to touch on that you shared, one, being like LSD and recreational use and stuff like that. One of the interesting things about LSD is that it was researched back in the 50s and 60s, like as far for addiction recovery and stuff like that. And when you're looking at like the grid, it's not one that's like super addictive. And the same can be said for psilocybin, right? So dependency and addiction and stuff like that with certain psychedelics is not something that is often seen. And I'm so glad that you shared that because that is something like we have had people come to us who have histories of addiction, of alcoholism, or whatever it may be. And the thing about it is, too, is that like you can be addicted to anything. It's
Hmm.
what are you running from, right? Like, what are you trying to cover with that addiction? That is really the thing to get curious with. And one of the reasons why I also believe that like psilocybin and maybe perhaps even LSD, one of the reasons that can be effective is that sometimes you can't hide from things on these things, right? And that kind of leads me into what you're talking about with the light and the shadow of psilocybin, is that it's almost like a trickster, right? It's a little mischievous at times, and it can be really great. You can feel connected to everything around you. Like some people speak about just this connection to God and this feeling of just whatever, this overexpanded, like pure conscious feeling. But there's also the flip side of the coin, which is where like the shadow work comes in and you start seeing some of like that deep story, right?
Hmm.
The story that can be some of our biggest shadows. And so yeah, that's kind of the thing that goes along with that. And and it's not to scare anything, I mean, some people would say that that would be a bad trip. And I say that there's a lot of gems in that. It can be a challenging trip. This is where having support is important. This is where having a safe setting is important. This is like a mindset. Like there's so much that goes into that. But also setting yourself up for success, and knowing that, yes, this is a possibility. And what am I going to do if that comes into play, right? How am I going to navigate that? So all very interesting, or thank you for sharing that stuff. And yeah, that's my thoughts on it.
Oh, you're very welcome. Yeah, it's what's interesting with the LSD, what I found interesting with the LSD was I was able to control it in a way. It was very like I don't want to say control, but I was able to shift myself into different avenues the way I wanted it to. Um, I didn't seem like other people were able to do that, but that's how I saw it with psilocybin. It would took hold of me. Like it decided what I was seeing. I wasn't able to do anything. Like I realized that very quickly when my wife brought me back down. I realized I was in a different realm. I wasn't able to control that with LSD. I would just lay on the ground on my chest and put all my limbs out, and I knew I wasn't flying, but I felt like I was flying, and it was the most close to flying I've ever gone. And I could see everything in my town. Even though I knew I was in the grass, I could just see everything. And that's exact. I mean, I just spent hours. That's the only thing I did for hours.
I love
And
it.
so some other people tore the ever living crap out of my lawn, but I just noticed that I was really relaxed and enjoyed it, and I was able to control it with psilocybin. And I've heard that. I've heard that people say that with LSD, you're the driver. With psilocybin, you're the passenger.
Yeah, it can be like that. It can be like that for some, for sure. And this is why intention is really important when you're using these things, right? It's no different than cannabis. And this is applicable to both the mini dose, the macro dose, and the micro dose, right? When you're using these substances, the intention behind it is incredibly important because when you use them, you have an increased presence, an increased awareness around things, and the psilocybin will increase emotional sensitivity, right? So if all of a sudden something that you've been like not wanting to see, right, even in microdosing, comes up to the surface. Like, you really need to sit with why you are using it in the first place and how you're going to navigate this and what your intention is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not coming in here as a silver bullet. It's not coming in here to fix things for you. It is a tool that desires active participation so that you can actually achieve the things you're wanting to. If you feel to share, I do believe you're not currently taking anything or using anything outside of cannabis, correct? That's what
Correct.
you said? Do you have a history of using any types of antidepressants or anything for anxiety or anything like that?
I have a history of it. It's not something I looked for. I
Mm-hmm.
was prescribed it. I was prescribed Xanax, clonazepam, and trazodone at the same time. So I was a zombie upon zombies. And then when I stopped using that, I went into more, the harder stuff. I got to about meth. I never did meth, but I was about to, and that's when somebody gave me a joint
Hmm.
of cannabis, and I was still basically saying I don't want to do drugs, and they were basically saying you were willing to do meth, and you're saying no to cannabis. That's how bad they got to me. And so I finally, when I tried cannabis, I realized how much it alleviated me. So I get it. I definitely understand it. But yeah, that's my history.
Cool. Yeah, thank you for sharing all of that. I really appreciate it because I mean it's a similar story to a lot of people. But one of the reasons why I ask, and I think it's important to know, is because psilocybin and microdosing is not a replacement for antidepressants and anti-anxiety medicine. This is not something that's used every day. It's something that's done a few days a week. It's something that's done on a protocol that can be done 6 weeks or more. It really depends on the person and what they're doing, and what they're trying to achieve. But antidepressants and things like that are very different than psilocybin in a way that they really, for some, will help kind of weather the storm, right? They're more of like a passive coping. They get you to an even kill to where you can just do what you need to do and get through the day, right? And psilocybin, again, is more of like an active coping. And it's not something that's going to numb you out. And that's something that a lot of people, like you talk about being a zombie. Well, psilocybin's not necessarily going to do that to you, especially not in a microdosing. Like, it's not going to put you down and all the things. It's not going to dissociate you, which is something that happens with antidepressants. So I think that's important to highlight, right? And also, like, especially people who have history of like intense trauma or not multiple, major depressive disorder, you're essentially given like a terminal diagnosis, right? You're going to be on antidepressants for the rest of your life, and this is the way it's going to be. And when you try coming off of them, you have these horrible withdrawal symptoms. Well, one of the things with psilocybin is that it doesn't have to be long term. It's not something that's done every day. And it's certainly not something that's going to cause withdrawal symptoms when you're taking breaks and you're doing these things, right? Um, One of the beautiful things about working with psilocybin, and again, this is not an alternative to antidepressants, but one of the things that makes it different is that since it's increasing your neuroplasticity, this is putting you in a space to be able to change your thought processes, to learn new things, right? To change your behaviors, your patterns, your rituals. So that in itself is a gift. And whenever this is like can become sustainable, right? This is not something that's going to happen overnight, right? But when you start catching yourself and you notice like how like you're not as hyper vigilant as you used to be, and you notice how you were and the sensation you have in your body when that comes back, and you're like, okay, well, maybe I don't like this. Like, I don't like the way this anxiety is. What are some tools I can do? Bring yourself back down. You're gaining this nervous system regulation. You're teaching yourself these tools, right, to help you get to nervous system regulation. Psilocybin is also helping you get there. But when you take the breaks, it's a little bit more sustainable, right? It's a little bit more like, oh, I'm not as reactive, or the ruminating thoughts aren't there, or the social anxiety isn't there, because you feel a little bit more comfortable in the room and you can actually breathe. And that is so different than
Mm-hmm.
antidepressants. And again, like, it's such a beautiful tool for like really feeling like yourself again, right? Self-actualization. I'm not saying that you're going to feel like you did 10 years ago. I'm going to say you feel good in where you are now. And that's why you feel like you did 10 years ago, right? Because you feel safe, you feel good, you're self-actualized, you're coming into that space again.
I hope so. I can't wait. I can't wait to see how this actually works. So, how does the microdosing work? Do I get any product from you guys? Where do I purchase this?
Yeah, great question. Thank you for asking, Jay. We don't directly supply anybody with microdoses, and they are not direct purchase.
Okay.
The people that we work with, we have a third party that's a trusted supplier, that supports us in that realm and or supports the people that we work with. But no, we don't just directly sell to anybody because we believe that people being educated around this and understanding how to actually use it is important, versus just doling it out, trying to make profit off of that. So,
Okay. Understandable.
yeah, that's how that works. So, thank you for
Okay,
asking.
sweet. So what you're saying is I can get in contact with somebody through you guys that you guys are suggest, or I can get it through a third party of my choosing.
Yeah, so some people come to us and they already have their own supply, right? And so they're just looking for guidance on use or integration. We've had multiple people who have come and talked about that.
Okay.
But yeah, so like the people that we work with that do need support in that realm, we will help you get supported with a trusted resource, right? Because there's a lot of people out there that you don't know, and is it scam and blah 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 blah. And so we just help make that connection after once we're working with people and in our programs that we offer. Yeah.
Okay.
What I like to tell people about like microdosing is that it's more about the experience than it is about the dose,
Okay.
right? So everybody's dose is different. And that's also, again, why it can be beneficial to kind of have some guidance to kind of answer questions of
Mm-hmm.
like, is this right? Oftentimes when people are not, I mean, oftentimes when people are getting started, they'll be like, I don't really feel anything. And again, just because you don't feel anything doesn't mean anything isn't happening. And what I've seen is that over like 2 to 3 weeks, people start seeing these subtle shifts that occur in their life, and for someone who has had such a profound transformation in your physical body, like one of the things that I share with people is like, okay, so let's say you're going to the gym and you have a specific goal and you're not noticing really any difference, but you see somebody and they're like, oh, wow, what are you doing? You look different. You changed. Well, that can be what it's like to microdose. But for some people, like they take their first couple of doses and they're like feeling focused, they have more motivation, or they're feeling calmer and they're actually noticing something in the beginning. But again, like whether you're feeling something or not isn't really the purpose because like there's still things that are occurring, but it is like creating an experience as well of whether it's what do you want to do, right? Some people are totally cool in one basket, and then other people are like, oh, I'm over here and this is how it is. So that's how I view microdosing, and that's how I guide people with microdosing.
So, admittedly, I did do about 5 days of this microdose before I decided to call you guys for this discovery call because, I didn't think about it at first. I was so excited to try it. So I just started taking it once a day. And then what I've experienced, I have no idea how much I'm supposed to be able to experience in 5 days. But all I really noticed, and I've read this from other people, there were certain colors that would be more vibrant. And that was about it. Like a shimmer, it was almost like seeing a rainbow in just certain things, but
Mm,
it wasn't anything more than that. And it wasn't like I could see a rainbow. It's just like you'd see a shimmer, and
mm,
that was about it. And I have no idea if I was more susceptible of that because I've heard people say that,
mhm,
but that's about all I noticed. But I also noticed that, when I would have someone cut me off in traffic, as opposed to wanting to rip their heads off, I was going, oh, everybody has, their bad days. And I was like, oh, well, maybe there is something to this.
Oh, that's so funny. Like, because that's what I've heard from other people share, right? And I mean, not to be like drab or like the killer of like fun, but sometimes microdosing can be a little underwhelming in the beginning because people are expecting to have this altered experience, or they're expecting to feel something like that is just like, oh my God, so noticeable, like you just took a gummy. And these things are not the same, right? And sometimes it is just like noticing that you're not like flipping the bird in traffic, right? Or like getting into a road rage. I've had some people say that, well, my spouse did X, Y, and Z, which would normally like spin me sideways, and I just didn't even care. And it made them feel so good and so grounded because they weren't like flipping a lid over something they normally would.
And as someone with PTSD, trust me, we sometimes it can happen. So yeah, it's very nice to get away from those feelings, from the anger. Like being a combat veteran, there are when you were overseas and you had a convoy, this is the type of stuff that I'm wanting to work on, is
Right.
just those little anger things. When we first
Mm.
got home, there's so many guys that talk about it. You're already in a heightened state of alertness that you see a bag on the road and it will send you through the roof, because overseas that's a bomb. And then you come home and you're supposed to know that's trash, but you don't know that's trash, and you're already your adrenaline's up here, and then somebody cuts you off and you're just like, oh, I'm gonna kill somebody. But that's where you really want to work on. I think like veterans could really benefit from the microdosing.
Yeah, and there's so much to be said about that, Jay. Like, thank you so much for sharing that. And just to go into further, like as far as like talking about the benefits of microdosing, right? And then the ability to like quiet the brain so you can have like some clarity, you can have that pause, right? To have a little bit more of the rational thinking, right? And then it doesn't necessarily mean that you don't still have the emotional or the irrational not going on in the background. It's that the rational is a little bit louder. Because I've
Mm-hmm.
had people say, like, I'm still anxious, it's still there. It's not as bad as it was, but at least I know why I feel this way now. Right. So there's that increased awareness, right? People come to it and they're like, I want to decrease the anxiety. I can't guarantee that's going to happen. But what I can probably, like, what will probably happen is you're going to have an increased awareness around things because you're going to be able to have more of a rational thought process, right? And you have to reprogram
Mm-hmm.
those things, right? And this is also where mindfulness comes into play, right? Being gentle with yourself. Mindfulness is the non-judgmental, bringing the awareness, bringing a little bit of the slowing down into your life to help with the nervous system regulation so you can navigate all this stuff, right? It's a part of it.
Would you agree that you also need to be in the right mind state to do this? I mean, like, let's say if I had decided to do this when I was at my heightened aggression, I think that it seems like it would be better to do it now where I've worked on myself so much, but I don't know. What do you think?
I think, what I feel is important for people coming into this is having some sort of awareness and being in some sort of forward moving process of addressing the things they're wanting to address. So if someone has anger issues and they are outbursts and they're doing these things and they feel hypervigilant, like, and they're just wanting it to go away and they're not doing breathing, they're not trying therapy, they're not doing other things, then psilocybin is not the place to start,
That's
right?
what I think. Yeah.
It's important to be in some sort of forward moving practice of like knowing that you have to do some sort of work and not just thinking this is going to dissipate.
And I'm assuming that's one important aspect of these discovery calls, is to ascertain where someone is at mentally, and just emotionally, I would assume.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Because, like, I mean, I don't, this is guidance that I would provide anybody, and there's probably somebody, maybe someone has a different opinion on it, but this is just the way that I work with this, is that I encourage people not to use these things if they're in acute crisis, because of having increased presence and increased awareness, right? Um, like I mean, I recently had some things that just like really flipped my world upside down. And I had this like increased awareness and like all of these things. And it was just like, God, like, I don't want to feel this way. I was upset. And it's like, I knew that I was wanting to dissociate and all this other stuff. And I was like, well, I just want to feel better. And I was like, well, what are my tools? And like microdosing came into my mindset and immediately went out. Cause I was like, I'm not in a state of mind to microdose right now because I'm upset. I feel hypersensitive. I know that this will increase my sensitivity. And I don't need to have any increased awareness around the things that are already going on, like not now in that time, right? Now, fast forward 4 or 5 days, and I'm in a very different space. And microdosing is a tool that I can bring on to continue to help me. And also, again, like, psilocybin can be destabilizing, even in microdosing. It can be destabilizing for people, right? When you're thinking of taking a large dose of psilocybin, when we're talking about it being this mischievous, like little mushroom that it is, think of like a snow globe, right? And it's all settled and you're chill or whatever, and then you shake it. And now you have this like snow globe that's got all this stuff going around all over the place now. Like that's what psilocybin is capable of doing.
Mm-hmm.
So if your snow globe is still all over the place, like perhaps you need to sit and try to figure out how to bring it down a little bit before you start stirring it up again. Unless you're like, and I tell people, like, this is a choose your own adventure. Take this for what it is, right? You can do whatever you want, but also know the possibilities of the things that could happen.
I don't know enough to say I agree, but that's the assessment that I came up to myself. So
Yeah,
I'm
I mean,
glad
it's
that
great.
you have corroborated.
So we talked about, your mental health history. We talked about your history with psychedelics, some of the other things that you've utilized and stuff like that. And what kind of like the microdosing, like as far as like what it kind of looks like, right? Like the gist of all of that. Do you have any questions? I know that you kind of already have done 5 doses and kind of shared a little bit of that experience, but do you have any more questions around microdosing or any thoughts or around anything that was shared?
So this is part of what I'm trying to work on. In 300 days on my deployment, but I can't. It wasn't until I forgave myself, basically.
Mm,
I had to admit it was my fault and then take responsibility and forgive myself. And that's where I was able to move on.
mhm.
And so a therapy did help me a lot, but I couldn't get past that until I just stopped going to therapy and I started smoking cannabis and got away from all their crap that they were shoving down my throat. And that's where, I numbed myself for 5 years. I did not learn. I did not heal. And then when I met my wife, that's where I really wanted to start healing.
Mm,
And she's really, my service dog, a lot of the other stuff that's happened, my kids, this is where I know that there's so many different tools, and that's why I want to incorporate this new tool. But I thought it
yeah,
might be important for you to kind of understand what you might be dealing with. But I've
totally.
worked on a lot of I got back from overseas in 2009, so I'm not that person anymore, but I need to work on that stuff.
Totally. Thank you so much for your vulnerability, Jay, and allowing me to witness and you sharing that. Because, I mean, you didn't have to. And you
I
didn't have to do a lot of things, and it's okay because you're here today. And I just really value that you shared that with me because I see you and I see your humanity and I see your love and your big and beautiful heart. And that's so cool. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you for not running for the hills.
So yeah, moving forward as far as like doing an onboarding call, if that's something that you're interested in, I think Megan had talked about us doing that as well. Like, just let me know what it feels good. And for your onboarding call, and feel free to use this in the call or not, because I think it's what I share with people getting prepped for the onboarding call. It's like really think about your intention on like why you're doing this. Really,
Mhm.
like what are you wanting to create? And expect an hour. And on the onboarding call, we'll talk about intention versus expectation. We'll talk about the dose, the protocol, some mindfulness-based practices, and we'll also talk about possibly some other supplements that might be supportive for you on the things that you're wanting to create within this journey. So
Okay.
that's what the expectations are. And I look forward to chatting with you in the future. So thank you for your
As do I.
time. Have a
Thank you
wonderful
very
day.
much.
All
You too.
right.
You are wonderful as always, and I can't wait to do this onboarding call. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Now, I hope that you learned or enjoyed this video. And if you have anything to add, any questions, comments, please let me know in the comments below, or leave a like if you enjoyed the video. And don't forget to subscribe if you want to follow along with my journey. And now, as always, Jay is going to go smoke a J.